Welcome back my YouTube friends. As you see, I've changed a little bit. I have a light here, shines really nice on my face. That's pretty nice. So it's gonna change the colors all the time. There, I have a little small ring light, so it keeps me visible, as you can see. If you've never been on this channel, I'm Ziggy. I'm tattooing for about 9 years. I work in Derby, Studio One. As you can see, actually I have still t-shirt from them. What I want to speak today is what happens when you tattoo tattoos with outline and without. What's the pros, what's the benefit, what's the consequences, and what happens if you use both of them, or what happens if you mix them together and you create the mixture of both. So what happens if you only have shading, realism, no outline? What happens after years? How does it heal? Do you have experience enough to know if you're tattooing good enough that after years and years and years, if you don't put any hard line, how does it heal? See, that was my question when I was tattooing. For the first years, I only did realism, which included no line work at all. So I didn't use any line work in my realism. Now I do. But that's a story for later on. So what happens when you don't use any line work? Mostly what happens is you don't have a hard edge. There's no cleanness. You get clean in shading. You get really smooth. It's nice and round. It's realistic. It's nice photo. It looks pretty cool. It looks badass. If it's done really nice, it looks really cool. But the problem is there's no sharp edges. So over years and years and years, tattoos kind of fade, they blur a little bit. The problem is if you put like no lining at all and you don't have clean sharp edges to the eyes, to the eyebrows, maybe your lips, facial features, the hands, if you tattoo portraits and people. But imagine if you tattoo animals and stuff like that where they do have more sharp edges than humans have, you end up with an image which is blurred. It's good for the first year, maybe second year. 5 years later, that blurriness becomes proper more blur. It's not really ideal style. It's good for the photos and it's good for like the first 2 years, but then it will go eventually. That's what happens when you have no crispness or no hard lines at all. It's a popular style. Everybody wants it. Now when tattoos moved from like more like American traditional line work based and really heavy into more realistic, more and more people go towards that. They forget to use technique called lining. The consequences is more and more tattoos become really faded, blurred out, and they all smoosh into one kind of grey arm where you don't really understand what the hell is going on. It's all just blurred. And you need to like pay really close attention to understand what that is, and it could get to the point where the client needs to explain to his friends what even that is, and that's not really cool. When you do that kind of style, you need to have quite high contrast and you need to have really smooth shading. Shading is quite cool, from black to light, from light to dark. You just make smooth graduation, and that's as far as the shading goes. The contrast is what makes the image clean and makes it stand up from like years and years down the line. You can have no lines at all. I can admit there is certain ways you can avoid that. But what do you need is really high contrast when you have blacks and really light lights, and that becomes like bulletproof for years and years and years. Otherwise, if the tones are pretty similar, a little bit darker grey and lighter grey, they will eventually become so close that there's not even a difference. The high and the low, it looks exactly the same, and it just becomes really flat. Unless you do like the guy who did my arm. I have really contrasty piece on me. I might drop a picture there just for you to guys see what I have. He did a good job. He did add some line work here and there, but mostly he didn't. But his style is built for that. Let's talk about if you do put line work. Tattoos with line work only, let's say that. What's tattoos built around the line work? Just the line work itself. You do add shading, but line work mostly. In any way, he will heal way better. The old tattoos what still comes in our shop, in my boss's shop, they still there. Like, we can still understand them, we can read them. They're not maybe as clean as they used to be, maybe not as sharp as they used to be, but you can still understand what is going on. Everything you can still read. I don't really believe these year's tattoos, or last year, a year before, with no hard line, gonna stay as still the old school tattoos, what we know as old school, which is bold hard lines and like high contrast. They didn't play around, they just made the bold lines and they put a big statement, and guess what, it still works. If you see lads who are like 40, 50, 60 and you go to them, they still have tattoos and you can still exactly know what that is. Few of them, I admit, they're not really as clean, not as goodly done, but they're there and you can still understand what that is. It's age proof. And lining itself, from that, people have created crazy styles from it. If you think of it, it's just a line, just black line. You pull it downwards, upwards, sidewards. But what you can do with it, there's styles like illustrative, neo-traditional, blackwork, tribal, Maori tribal, which is like mixture of both. You get geometric tattoos with loads of triangles, loads of circles, loads of that stuff. You get ornamental style, all the fancy stuff. You get mandala itself. Then I've seen styles like minimalistic, when they have really thin lines and they build sharp images, minimalistic shading to it, but it's based more on line work. That is a style itself. Tattoos are mostly like that size, really tiny, but they still clean, sharp, and they lines. They will probably last for quite long. And of course, there's style like Japanese. I know that it's not built just on line work, but line work is a big part of all that style. And there's no Japanese in soft realism, and I don't think any soft realism tattoos would stay as sharp and as clean as like big bold as Japanese, which is gonna stay forever like it is. Even if the body and the person have died, that ink still is gonna be there probably till probably like years after like he passes away. That tattoo is still on his skin there, like bulletproof. So that proves the line work is really essential in tattooing. Either you like it or don't like it, that's totally up to you, but you need to have line work. And now imagine when you combine the realism and the line work into one, you have like ultimate perfect combination. If you understand how to do both worlds at the same time on equal level, you're pretty much invincible. 90% of every tattoo artist out there who is really good and really understands how to tattoo and how to put lines and shading in the skin, you probably know him. He's like world famous. He probably has 40,000+ people following here and there on YouTube and everywhere, and people take advice from him. People look out for them. These are the ones you probably look up for and you try to get the inspiration. And I could call a few Instagram names myself that I do follow and take really good ideas from them. If you notice, what they have is they have clean lines, and even if you don't see them, they there, and they have smooth shading. You wouldn't follow a guy who does really bad shading, and you wouldn't follow a guy who doesn't do clean lines. So when it comes to lining, you need to know how to use small liners, middle liners and big liners. For the sake, that skill always, it's bulletproof. Once you know how to use all those needles, I would say from like 3 to 9 minimum, you need to like master them. After that, you just bulletproof. What I do personally, when it comes to like realism, I line as much as I possibly can. If I would do like, if you see me now, and I would do literally a moment like this. Imagine if I tattoo literally this image right now, like that. I would literally outline my finger with black or really light grey or mid grey, but I would outline it, give the sharpness, clean edge. Then I would take black, literally here, and from those lines I would literally shade till here. I don't know if that camera can see it now, but if I would probably still line this with really black, clean, sharp edge line, and pack that in. What happens is, after years and years, that clean line will stay most likely clean. If you only shade this, it doesn't have that sharp edge, that cut. This would be still in shading. Imagine these edges are just shaded edges. They're not really clean cut, but they're just there. Those would smudge and you would just see more and more bluerness. The guy who did line, his tattoos will stay longer and better. The ones who didn't, they will start to fade. Guess on which one the client will come back. So your ideal concept would be when you combine both of them. Really nice shading from realism, light, depth, contrast, all the elements necessary, and the line work skill necessary, and you combine them two. When you have neo-traditional line and really nicely shaded. When you have Japanese line with bold lines and it's really smooth, nicely shaded. Those are the people you follow, and be that person who people follow. And those are the skills what makes that happen. All I'm saying is try to do that every day. Not just here, not just there, like occasionally, what if, or especially for this client, more or less every day. Clean lines, line them like as much as you can. Line, and then get really nice into shading and line really smooth, and people will appreciate. The tool's gonna heal better. You will get more clients, and you're gonna be thankful to yourself that you did the homework, learned those lessons, and you became better in both of them. If your style requires to be inline work only, that's cool. But if your style requires to be in realism, I would strongly suggest to learn how to use shading into that style anyways. If you got hats, if you got hair, if you got areas you can line like these, keep them clean and just line them, shade them in, and that line will disappear because the shading will come till that line, and the line will become a part of the shading. But the shading now has a clean cut edge what will stay really cool years after years. And that's what we need. We need people to see that our tattoos can stay after years and years, not just for that day, not just for the 2 weeks. You'll see them as well, year after year. And you will be most likely happy to see them if they have a good tattoo, because then you won't feel embarrassed about yourself. So that's my suggestion, guys. And this was a quick video for me to explain my ideas and my thoughts on what happens when you put lining, and what happens when you put shading, or what happens if you do realism without the line work, and vice versa. So thank you very much for watching. If this was a helpful video, don't be afraid to drop a like. It does help me. Yeah, I admit it does help me. And because some other people did, I did gain some new people following, and those people are learning now and then studying, and we're just here to help each other, and I'm here to help you. So thank you very much for helping, and I'll see you in the next video.